Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast, the podcast dedicated to simplifying the commercial real estate industry for the masses. Each week, we sit down with industry experts to dissect the many facets of commercial real estate and extract valuable lessons you can apply to your business. Whether you're a new or seasoned business owner or investor, the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast will be your go-to resource for all your commercial real estate needs. Now, here are your hosts, Raphael Collazo and Jeff Walston.
Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Academy podcast. I'm your host, Raphael Collazo, here with my co-host, Jeff Walston. How's it going, my friend?
It's going great. I hope everyone else is doing well. Weather is finally heating up here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm grateful for that. Also, speaking of business, in this podcast is really picking up. So we are thankful for all those 5-star reviews. So keep giving us 5-star reviews as you listen to these episodes. But how's it going over there, my friend?
It's going well, man. Going well. I cannot complain. Business is good, and just trying to, get everything ready. Like I'd mentioned on the previous episode, we're getting married in November, my fiance and I. So we're just trying to get that all squared away. And summertime's here, so we're trying to take advantage of the nice weather and long days, and everything that comes along with it. And really, just speaking of a great conversation, we had a phenomenal conversation with Gabriel Galiothe, who's a senior associate at Marcus Millichap in the Bay Area. A good buddy of mine lives in the Bay Area. I've had the pleasure of visiting there a few times. So it was really great to be able to talk to someone who has, firsthand knowledge of the area, so that, we can get a broader insight on all the things that have been happening in the area over the last several years. What we first talked about was, what got him in the business in the first place. He studied real estate related major in college, and then ultimately got into commercial real estate business. We also talked about, a day in the life of an investment sales broker. He's been doing that over the last 7-8 years. And so we talked about some of the things that he does on a day-to-day basis, and some of the early struggles he faced as he looked to gain experience and, get transactions in the space as well. We also talked a little bit about some of the pitfalls that he sees investors that he works with, falling for during the acquisition process. He works with a variety of different investors and a variety of different experience levels. So, he shared some insights for those individuals who are just getting started, maybe some of the things they need to look out for, and those who are a little bit more experienced, what are some of the things that he has to educate them on in order to make sure that they're able to get a deal done in the space as well. And then, finally, we touched on, some of the best ways to add value to an investment once you actually purchase the property. He specialized in multifamily, so we kind of focused on some of the ways that you can improve those types of properties. And then finally, we touched on, the landscape of investments post-COVID in the future. San Francisco is a unique environment. It's going to be a lot different over there than it is in Louisville, than it is in Texas, than it is in New York. And so he kind of shared some site-specific data and site-specific insights pertaining to how he sees the future in that space as well. And then, to round out everything, we touched on, the digital marketing piece. He's been pretty heavily focused on LinkedIn and other social media platforms and digital marketing. And he kind of touches on why he thinks those are of value to brokers going forward to make sure that they can grow their business over time. So thought it was a great discussion. Gabriel's just a real cool guy, and I'm really excited to, that's one of the cool things about this podcast. We get to meet so many cool people, and, the next time we're in San Francisco, we'll definitely be reaching out to him and just connecting. So, Jeff, do you have anything like that?
Okay. Like you said, I think you covered most of it. Gabriel is a great guy, and especially he's a real asset, seems like, over there in the Bay Area in California. And he even said also that he touched space with Oakland. So if anyone out there is listening and you want to invest over there, you should definitely give him a call and reach out, especially after listening to this episode.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. He was a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really excited to, hear what you guys think of the podcast episode. And, again, what we typically do at the right when we start this podcast is we like to thank you all so much for your support. Again, we've just been so blessed and so humbled by the fact that you guys have supported us over the last year and change. And, we've seen the significant uptick in our downloads as a result of you guys leaving 5-star reviews for the podcast. So our ask right now would be for you to take a second to be able to go to Apple Podcast and go leave us a 5-star review. It makes a world of difference to us, and it really encourages us to continue to make great content for you all. Along with that, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So again, thank you all so much. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this episode. Well, hey, Gabriel, great to see you this fine afternoon.
Yes, guys, great to talk to you guys as well. Great to see you guys as well.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for
Definitely.
having me.
And you're tuning in from San Francisco, is that correct?
Yes, San Francisco Bay Area. My particular office is in Oakland, but I do work San Francisco and the Oakland East Bay office as well.
Awesome, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
I've been to San Francisco twice, and one of my good buddies lives out there in Oakland, actually. So
Yeah,
it's a great area, man, really, and it's it's the hub of technology for the United States. So
exactly.
But it's great to get your perspective on the market. And I know we're going to touch on that a little bit later in the podcast, but we've had the chance to interview from people from all across the country. So it's always kind of cool to hear their insights about their local market and how they see it evolving over time. So what we typically do when we first interview people is we like to learn a little bit more about the person that's across the table from us. So if you don't mind kind of sharing your backstory, I think that'd be awesome.
Okay. Well, I'm Gabriel. I went to school. I majored in urban land development and real estate economics at Fresno State here in California. My parents, how I got started in real estate, my parents are immigrants from Haiti, and they moved here in the mid 80s and migrated here to the Bay Area. My dad is a pastor, and of course, my mother does ministry as well, missionary work. When they came here, they ended up buying their first property in Oakland, and that's kind of started my real estate bug in my heart to kind of get going. They when they first bought their first property, me and my father, we worked on it ourselves. Where we're doing our own constructions on the property, we're doing our own remodels and fixing different things, and that kind of gave me a little bit of a background on how to kind of do the construction side of the business. And to where when I went to school, it was kind of the more paperwork. So with the finance and economics side, it was more the numbers, the investment numbers and things like that. So long story short on that end, it's just more investing just time in a different product type and learning different things for my studies. And then finally graduated from school, I was learning more just about highest and best use of land and investment, different properties like that. Once I graduated college, I started being more in the multifamily field, doing brokerage of selling apartment building 4 units to 200 units here in California. And so that's pretty much a short, basic kind of rundown of my background history in real estate.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And you alluded to your background in getting into the construction side, at least on your own family's properties. And I know Jeff, he started off building houses when he was like 13 or 14 as well. Okay. And so that's kind of where he got the itch to do it. And I'm not, originally from the area, nor am I, in the commercial real estate industry to begin with at all. And I came from the tech side. So I was in development and consulting, and then got into the commercial real estate space. So it's always kind of interesting to hear people's backstories because, it's not a linear path into the industry. A lot of times there's a lot of twists and turns, and some people just kind of fall into it. So it's always kind of interesting to hear your backstory.
Yeah, and exactly. And even with my travels in real estate as well, I ended up majoring in urban land development and real estate economics. A lot of people don't major or even go to school for that stuff. And even though there are majors that could do something like that, I know it's even in my particular office, I'm at Marcus Millichap, but in my particular office, there's guys that coming from literature background, political science background. My office manager studied art history. And he used to be one of the top brokers in the San Francisco market. So a lot of people come in a lot of different fields and end up in commercial real estate and just real estate investment alone. And because they just find like they just want that financial freedom to be able to live on to their life, things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was it your family in particular that kind of got you interested? Because I don't, you didn't allude to if they were in residential or commercial. So I'm not sure. Was it them that directed you towards the commercial side or?
Well, not necessarily. My family was in residential. My dad kind of started off with a couple of single family houses. And then I had, it's a funny story, in high school, I was dating a girl in high school senior year, and I visit her uncle's house, and I went there and he had this nice grand house, 4-bedroom, 3.5 bathroom house in a city called Rodeo, which is kind of a suburb to San Francisco. And then they had the pool table, he had the hot tub, and he had a Porsche, a motorcycle. And I'm like, telling my girlfriend, like, hey, what does your uncle do? And he was like, he invests in commercial real estate. And that's kind of what kind of flipped the switch on me to kind of like, all right, this is, I kind of want to lift something like that. When I was in college, my junior year, I did an internship at Prudential Realty in Fresno, California. And I kind of seen the in and out of just the single families, what's kind of done for the transaction, the commissions, and the weekends being, doing open houses and things like that. And I kind of looked at it like, I'm not exactly sure if that's the route I want to go. And since my studies kind of looked at more of the financial, I took a lot of appraisal classes. I took a lot of real estate law classes, and just more of just highest and best use of development. That's what kind of made me kind of switch into the commercial mindset and said, that's kind of more what I kind of want to go towards. And it's a little bit more of a commercial not commercial. What am I trying to say? Conventional type of, suits and tie kind of dressing type of setup of a work versus residential is a little bit more laid back, kind of, do it on your own time thing. And that's reason why I kind of navigated more to the commercial side.
Definitely. No, and especially in a state like California, where, obviously there's a lot more regulation of different things you can and can't do when it comes to zoning, when it comes to things like new developments and all these other things. Like, the value you can offer on that side is significant. And obviously it's got more webs and more strings that you can pull on to be able to help your clients achieve their ultimate goal of acquiring or developing those types of properties. So, you alluded to the fact that you've been in investment sales since you started. Could you kind of walk us through what's a day in the life look like? Because our audience, there are people who are more established in their careers, whether on the brokerage and development end or lending or a variety of different facets within the commercial real estate industry. But then there's also those individuals who are in college and they're exploring potential different options as far as careers are concerned. And so if you could elaborate a little bit on, maybe a day in the life of an investment sales broker, and then maybe also touch on, as you're getting started, what were some of the struggles that you faced?
Okay. So I've been in the business. Well, I've had my license for 8 years, but also majored in urban land development. So that also added some years in real estate as well, doing internships, working for, people before I had my license. A day in a life with me is, I'll take it to like the first beginning. When I first started my first year, the main thing that we're kind of doing is just cold calling and farming, trying to get in touch with owners and, build your book of business to, see if I could get a call to someone, an owner of a 5-unit building, and see if they'll be willing to have coffee with me. Let me just come out and see their apartment building, see some vacant units just to come out. And there's nobody that's giving me these phone numbers. There's nobody, my manager's not giving me contacts to call and people that they don't want to call. Normally now, I would always suggest that most beginning agents should work with a senior agent, somebody that's older, been in the business for, let's say, 5 to 10 years, have already a book of business. Myself, I didn't do that. And I would say that was probably one of the worst decisions I've ever made. Just trying to, do stuff on my own, trying to, get my footing by myself. I made it, I was able to navigate that stuff by myself, but I would say I probably could have cut out maybe 2 or 3 years establishing myself if I would have, kind of get a senior agent, work on some of those deals. And when you're working with senior agents, you're probably going to get some of the busy work, paperwork, stuff that people don't really want to do, but it's a learning curve to learn how to evaluate a property, how to work at operating statements, calculate NOI and cap rates, look up comps on CoStars and LoopNet and things like that. But back to the original. So my day starts in my first year of, getting up, working my farm list, cold calling. I'm calling maybe about 40 to 50 numbers a day, trying to, get people on the phone and get into my spiel. I'm calling them, hey, this is Gabriel from Marcus Millichap. There's a property next door that's for sale. Would you be interested in looking at, the operating statement? So just looking at this building a property sale. Sometimes I get hung up on, sometimes I might be interested. Sometimes I could just send them a flyer and they just never respond. But it's always good to just confirm that's a good number and just have that contact with them. When you're getting a little bit more seasoned, let's say year 2 or 3, you have those set clients to where you call them that first year and this guy might be a buyer. He owns in, let's say, downtown Oakland, and he'll be looking at for something somewhere around $1 million. But you'll have that in the back of your mind, or you have a little note sheet that if you ever come across an owner that might sell in this particular size and price range, you could call that guy that you've been calling and just kind of fish them that deal. And that's pretty much a day in the life of a broker that's starting off to kind of mid-range, because it's a lot of outreaching, building your book of clients, and the contact that you're, continually following up, sending out mailers, sending out emails, and just, get on the phone and trying to get in front of them to have coffee or lunch, things like that.
Awesome. No, that's some great insights. And that's something that,
Really
when I was getting into the business, and to give you a backdrop on myself as well, I started back in mid 2019. So it's almost been 3 years now, which is crazy to think, but I came from a different background completely. And when I started having conversations with people who were in the investment sales side and in the retail leasing side and the, tenant rep for a variety of different, property types, I started getting a feel for what potentially I would want to eventually get into. And you alluded to the fact of getting under someone who has a lot of experience and already has a book of business. I think that is critical because, you can fight through it yourself. I mean, there's been plenty of people who have done that. And, as an industry, I think the brokerage side, kind of prides itself on the, sink or swim type mentality, which is not the most productive way to handle, new onboarding. But, in a situation where you do get in with someone who's a little bit more established and has that book of business already built up, you do try to shrink the learning curve, as they say, because, the first few years of any business endeavor, it's going to take you a while to get going. And, I'm now that you've been in it for, many years, now you can kind of look back and say, okay, well, these are the lessons that I've learned. And hopefully we can impart some wisdom on people that, are listening today that, hey, if you're getting started, this is what some of the things you could look into. So.
And also too, just to piggyback on what you're saying, the best thing to kind of do is also just interview different agents in different fields. Like I think you said retail that you were in.
Mm-hmm.
So, interview a retail agent. You could do industrial brokers. I'm a multi-broker. You could do a multifamily broker like myself, office leasing and office sales, and just kind of, pick their brain and see which route that you want to go. The reason why I moved on investments is I kind of like how the commission structure works, where you kind of work for something and then at the end of the sale, you get a percentage of the sales, a little bit larger lump sum than, let's say, a retail broker or a triple net guy, which triple nets are kind of similar to investments, but office leasing commissions kind of are calculated a little bit different, and the timetable a little bit different as well too. So I would always say, just if you're looking at different fields, interview, have conversations, have coffee with just different brokers in different fields and see which route is best for you.
Definitely.
That's great advice. Great advice, Gabriel. Great. So speaking about on investors, what are some common pitfalls that you see that they make when they're acquiring assets? Can you elaborate on some of those?
It's two different type of investors, I would say, that I kind of deal with. With multifamily, I do sometimes do. So California is a little bit different from the rest of the world, where in the Bay Area, in multifamily, you could get 4-unit apartment buildings are considered residential. But in Oakland, California, 4 units buildings could cost around $1 million. Where if you're in Texas, you're in, Kansas, 4 units might not be hitting those prices. So they kind of leave those to residential units, where I would kind of do, 4-unit buildings. San Francisco 4-unit buildings could be somewhere around $2 million, so it's a little bit different price tag. So I would deal with some of let's say a first-time home buyer, somebody that's a little bit newer investing, where they don't necessarily do the homework and kind of figure out, okay, I'm buying this property, I have enough for the down payment, it's going to make this amount of money, but they're not seeing the back end stuff. How much would it cost for a water bill? Is the water bill separate for all 4 units, or just one to them and I have to pay for it? How much the property tax going to be? Where my more seasonal investors that are investing, this is like the 3rd or 4th building, they kind of know what's kind of going on. They know how what's the property tax is going to be. They know what's the average insurance is going to be. They already have a team of handymans or contractors to kind of fix these different things. I would just say one of the biggest things that I kind of find is just not being prepared of the back end stuff after you purchase the building. Not necessarily getting calls at 2 a.m. because of a broken toilet, but just understanding, if I get that call at 2 a.m., who am I going to call? not going on Yelp at 2 a.m. trying to find somebody that's open. You already got a saved contact for a plumber to kind of, do these different things. So I would say just it's a little bit different depending on the type of client that I'm kind of working with. With my more seasoned investors, I would say the issues that I kind of find with them looking into properties is that they've been in the business for about 10 to 20 years, and they know what they purchased properties for, let's say in the early 2000s, and they want those numbers in 2022. And it is kind of like, all right, this is not something that's doable. And now we know we have this interest rate problem. And if they want to sell their building, they would want 2022 prices. But if they want to buy, they want 2008, 2009 prices. So it's just being realistic with my sellers on both sides and with my buyers on both sides, seasoned buyers, and then newer, younger investors and things like that. That's probably my biggest headache right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because that's literally the game you have to play a lot of times with buyers, is that they have this sticker shock almost a lot of times, and especially in this environment that we found ourselves in over the last few years, where you've had such a run up in pricing in a variety of different property types, and it's just like, I mean, you may have bought that property for, let's say, $150 a square foot, just as an example, but now it's closer to 200 or 220 a square foot. And that spread is always just like a killer to them, but that's the market. And so that's where we come in as educators to say, look, I understand that this is what happened, 6-7 years ago, but here are comps or all this other information to support, the reason why this is what it is. So
yeah, exactly. So
definitely.
That's one of the hardest things that I'm kind of coming around. And then just calculating these cap rates for clients and gross rental multiplier for clients and stuff is they know what they purchase their buildings for and what they see things are kind of going for. So it's just not, coming together, things like that. So it makes my job a little bit harder, but the best brokers would navigate those things and bring them both sides together. That's literally what we get paid for, is, bringing a buyer and seller together to agree on a common interest on the sale.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So one of the things I'm kind of curious about is, obviously, depending on which market you're investing in, there may be different ways that you could potentially add value to these investments. And I'm sure that investors that you work with, when they look at an opportunity, they're trying to find ways to maybe improve the property in some way to be able to increase its value. So what are some of the ways that you typically see or advise your clients on trying to, add value?
So in this San Francisco Bay Area market, our investors don't necessarily look at they look at the NOI and they look at, how they're going to be cash flowing, but that's not something that is common here in the San Francisco Bay Area market. They're more looking at up and coming areas and just the valuation of the building when they purchase it and what it could be valued in a couple of years, which is kind of hard to kind of fathom in different parts of America because of other places want to have different rules on how much they should be doing cash on cash returns and all that stuff. So what some of my investors would look at the upside on the building. If they have, in California, they have rent control, where you could control how much you could raise rent each year on a tenant. And they will look at buildings that are kind of underserved, where the previous owner didn't raise rent, so they have some low-paying tenants, and see, over time, it's a kind of a waiting game. Wait for that tenant to kind of move out. If it's a one-bedroom, somebody that's in their, late 20s, early 30s, they might get married, they might have kids. One bedroom is going to, be too small for them, so they kind of do a waiting game to where that tenant might move out in 2 or 3 years once the situation. Like myself, I recently got married, and you said that you just getting married in November, where one bedroom might not work out and you're going to need a bigger space. So I know investors kind of like a 1-bedroom apartments or studios close to college versus 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom unit type of buildings, where 2 bedrooms and 3-bedroom units, people get kind of comfortable. Why would they need to move? It's not going to be a situation to where, their space is going to be a little bit too small. They'll just bring a significant other inside their 2 to 3-bedroom unit. So investors kind of look at that. Then they look at just the livable of the building, remodeling the common area spaces, remodeling laundry rooms, if they have a patio and things like that. So that's kind of ways investors would, bring up the style of the building to make it a little bit more attractive, a little bit more valuable for themselves when they're purchasing these buildings.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you alluded to that, regarding the different laws depending on municipalities, and obviously the return profile for a San Francisco Bay Area versus where we're located here in the middle of the country. The investors who typically invest in our market are heavy looking at cash flow. They're really looking at what can I get on a month-to-month basis as far as income's concerned. But in the Bay Area and other high price markets, I mean, that's the appreciation is something that I'm sure is of higher value.
Exactly. And also to, like, I have investors. So there's this, I'm sure you guys heard of Sacramento, California. Sacramento is about an hour and a half north of San Francisco. Then we have Central Valley, where I went to school, Fresno State, which is about 2.5 south. I would see investors that live in San Francisco, but they would, kind of go in those markets to kind of get a little bit better returns, even though those markets are getting a little bit more saturated because they're kind of saying, oh, these investors coming down, let's raise our prices. But that's where some people might get a little bit better returns, to kind of go to Central Valley, but don't go too far past Bakersfield where you get into LA, or going north where you're going to Sacramento and getting some better returns. But I mean, here in the Bay Area, San Francisco cap rates are low threes, low to mid threes. East Bay is going to be 4.5, cap rates. And people are probably listening to that and thinking those are crazy, where you're getting 6, 7, 8% cap rates in Texas and middle of America type of stuff, even Arizona. But that's just kind of the cap rates that we have in San Francisco. So people are buying stuff and breaking even. They're not going in the red, they're breaking even, maybe, coming up with 1,000, 2,000 profits every month. But, at the end of the day, if they buy a property, let's say in 2017, it might double the valuation within 5 to 6 years. And that's what people are kind of banking on.
Absolutely.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
So in the investment landscaping, particularly after COVID, how has that evolved since then? And then where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think here in the Bay Area with COVID, we got hit in an interesting way because, like you said before, it is a tech hub, and everybody with the tech business in San Francisco and San Jose, which is about 45 minutes from San Francisco, their model was, you come into work at 8 o'clock, you leave at 8 p.m. 12-hour days, you have lunch here, you have dinner here, you have a drink after work and play ping pong, and then you go to sleep. Sometimes they'll have beds to nap in and things like that. So with COVID kind of happening, it kind of shocked everybody's system here in the Bay Area, to where we don't really need to be in the office, 24/7, and we don't necessarily have to sit next to somebody and work, right next to each other because the intervention of Zoom. And so that kind of affected the Bay Area in a big way, to where now you still can't go into a restaurant here without a mask on. You can't get on public transit without a mask, where other places have a little bit lack more rules. You still need to show proof of vaccination. So a lot of offices, a lot of businesses, had to pull back because there was an exodus of, San Francisco to find bigger space, where somebody that used to live in San Francisco could move to Utah and work remotely and have a better living, or move to, like, let's say Boise, Idaho, and, buy a single family house for $300K versus renting a 1-bedroom in downtown San Francisco for $3,500 a month. So you could get the backyard, you could get the outdoor spaces and things like that, and still be able to work here in the Bay Area. We're somewhat getting back to what it was. We're nowhere near what it was, beginning of 2020. Stores are starting to open up, but downtown San Francisco is somewhat of a ghost town, where a lot of businesses, a lot of retail spaces are just closed and just hasn't, opened back up. And that's the tricky part, what COVID kind of did for us, to where people want more space now. They don't see, like, why do I need to travel into work and stay there 12 hours when I could just easily, go to work, let's say 8 to 12, have lunch with my significant other or my kids, get back on the phone at 1:30, and then continue the rest of my day at the comfort of my home, still doing the same amount of work that I'm doing. And if I have to hop on a call and talk to a partner, you go on Microsoft Teams or Zoom, where you can have those conversations in face-to-face companies. So it's interesting to see what it will, if it ever will get back to what it was. I could kind of see it being somewhat of a hybrid because people enjoy being, having that comfort of being at home. Me, myself, I like kind of being in the office. I'm probably not going to be 100% in office, but I can see myself being 3 to 4 days in office because I like my space. I like my office at my office and just kind of knocking things out, cold calling and things like that, and having that set place. But I could definitely see just tech workers and just other people just being the more of the remote, just style of living and things like that. So I could definitely see that just continuing in the future.
Definitely, yeah. And you're seeing it in some companies. I know, like Tesla, they announced that they're trying to get everyone back in the office, and Elon Musk was pretty adamant about that. But then there's other companies like I know Facebook and others that have said that the work at home environment is still going to be a big part of their agenda going forward. And so you're right, and that and it's interesting too because of the fact that it is such a tech hub. A lot of the work that is done doesn't necessarily need to be done in a physical office, but that's going to be what the decision's going to be, the leadership and their understanding of how is that going to affect camaraderie, how is that going to affect communication on a broader scale if you don't have people physically in the office, because it's harder to manage people on day to day when you're in your home office and I'm in my home office, and I can hop on a Zoom call with you, but other than that, like, if there's maybe 20 minutes of interaction and then that's it. So
and I mean, even to add to that, I have a junior agent partner that I work with, and like I said, how I've kind of farmed my list is cold calling, and that's kind of one of the main ways. Him not sitting next to me, like I'm currently at my home space, but him not sitting next to me, hearing how I'm getting on the phone and cold calling and different techniques that I'm using, he don't get that knowledge just by sitting next to me in the office and hearing other agents and seeing their style of play of how to get this person on the phone and how to just convince somebody, hey, if this doesn't work, just different techniques to kind of keep them on the phone and get that appointment. And so I think that's the most important thing of being an office. And that's just on the real estate side of what I'm doing. I'm sure there's different examples on different portions, but that is somewhat important. And you don't get those same things of just Zoom classes that you'll have with a branch manager or whatever different type of business there are. Like my wife, she's she works in the marketing department at Sephora, where they're on 4 Zooms a day, literally every hour, and they have an hour break for lunch. But all they do, it seems like they're just Zooming, and that works for her, where she could just do her job and do her different spreadsheets to share just different marketing campaigns, email blasts for Sephora makeup. But just like I said in my example, where my junior just needs to hear just being next to somebody cold calling, because cold calling is not fun, but it's nice to be in a room of 4 or 5 different people or 10 different people, depending on the size of the office, just, knocking out some phone calls, just having that camaraderie of, all right, this is, laughing at people you just got hung up on, but just, kind of picking up and keep on going and things like that.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so you mentioned obviously the business development side of things is extremely important in our industry in particular, since we are an eat what you kill type of business. One thing I wanted to elaborate on was not only the cold calling side, but also the digital marketing side. And you're heavy on LinkedIn, which is great. That's a big been a big help in my business as far as being able to solicit conversations with people. But if you could elaborate a little bit on how has digital media and social media and those avenues helped you in your business?
I feel like it helped a lot, especially with LinkedIn, Facebook, even Instagram. Some of our owners are, normally on the older side that might not be on a lot of those social media network, but their office manager might be, their son, or daughter might be on these different websites. So I always still have that avenue of an Instagram or a Facebook. And I think those are important because the next generations are going to be on these different sites. Like me personally, like I own some multifamily property, and I am on these different websites. So just kind of seeing just different ads and seeing just different strategies where single family agents are using all of these different avenues to find the next buyer, to find the next seller, especially on Instagram. And even you see in these TikTok ads where agents are doing these funny dances just to kind of get these different strategies and things like that. Just have people just looking at their stuff. So, and like, there's a local agent here in the Bay Area that does single family. He calls himself Fast Agents, and he did an interesting marketing ploy to where he brought a bunch of Facebook ads and Instagram ads, and all he did was have a hashtag Fast Agent. He didn't have anything else on the post. So it just kind of made you kind of look up, what is Fast Agent? And you look up, you go to this page and he's talking about, oh, I'm a real estate agent here in Oakland and things like that. And that was just a very smart kind of avenue to where he went on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all he did was just a hashtag Fast Agent to where you're going to his page and drawing business to his page. So I think social media is a very interesting avenue to market different properties, to try to attract different agents and find people to let them know what you are and who you are and what you're about. And I just see that's going to be the future where, you know, people are our age or getting older, but that we just still use social media to where we got to incorporate those type of things. And then if there's someone that's a little bit more senior, they'll probably have a next of kin that are on social media, or they have an office manager, they have a senior vice president that on social media. So it's definitely a good avenue to kind of market on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And I know Jeff and I will attest to the fact that, you know, even from a digital standpoint, like the podcast, YouTube videos, I mean, you know, the way I always describe it is like, you know, let's say you do business development outreach by reaching out to someone and you don't get a hold of them right away. Maybe they listen to the voicemail and they're like, okay, who's this guy? And they go look up where do they go? They go to the internet. And so if you have this digital content, I mean, what do they see? Oh, you know, Gabriel was on this podcast. Oh, you know, Gabriel was on, you know, this YouTube, has a YouTube channel. Oh, Gabriel has, you know, a LinkedIn page that's really well established and it looks like he's providing a lot of great content. So the barrier, which is what, you know, we often deal with when we reach out to people, by the second time they have a conversation, that typically is a lot more like lowered than it would be in a situation where we're just calling out of the blue and says, who the heck's this guy, you know, that is randomly calling me. And so, you know, I always kind of preach to a lot of people that, you know, having a digital marketing, you know, arm where you really push content, whether it's on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. I'm huge into YouTube. I love YouTube because it's a search algorithm. You know, it's similar to Google in that, you know, you can type in search terms and that's, you know, your content comes up to the top. So, you know, that sort of thing as a supplement, because that's going to help your efforts as you start reaching out to people and having conversations and meeting with them. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, also too with Google, they have different ways you could kind of track your impressions and see how many times people press your number to call you in direction to your office, or and track your different things like that. And that's definitely a great way to kind of see who's coming on your page and who's how many times are people are clicking this link or clicking this photo. So that's definitely a great way, at minimum, just to have a Google business page, just to be able to track different things and how you know how many people are finding it. I compare it month to month, year to year as well too. So yeah,
absolutely. Gabriel, I just want to say we really, really appreciate all your time and your insights, especially for your area and your district and over there in the Bay Area. I know a lot of people are going to gain value, especially everyone that's starting in the industry in particular. So one of the questions to start rounding out the interview is, Raphael and I both are Basis readers, and we'd like to know who we have in front of us. And the question is what is one of the most impactful books that you've ever read? And it doesn't have to pertain to commercial real estate. It can be any type of sector.
I would probably say, which I'm sure half your readers, guests probably said that Rich Dad Poor Dad is one of my favorite books that I've read before. Very informative on just life in general, and just being kind of a real estate agent. I got a lot of tools and tips from that book as well. I want to say a different book because I'm sure that one's probably popular. Yeah, I've done the $1 million real estate agent as well too, just kind of reading different books. But I mean, I always try to read just different books and avenues, a lot of different articles, and just kind of follow a lot of people. But definitely Rich Dad Poor Dad would, you know, just kind of change your mindset of just how do you think it's just on your normal 24 hours a day type of life.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's probably one of the more commonly recommended ones. And it's because it's so impactful, right? It completely changes your mindset as far as the investment side is concerned, because we're fed for lack of a better word, a lie that, the best way to achieve wealth is to, just go the traditional route of just, and it may be for some people, but in a situation where you get an expensive education and then you buy a home and then you have all the things that come along with the trappings of quote unquote success, where you buy all these liabilities, that's not the ultimate path to financial freedom, which is what you and I and Jeff all aspire to. So, that mindset shift is really just a powerful one. So we appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no problem at all. No problem at all.
Yeah.
Definitely. So again, we just greatly appreciate your time, Gabriel. I know you're super busy, and I love the Bay Area. Hopefully one day here soon, I'll get a chance to get out there again, and we'd love to connect if possible. And then one thing I would typically like to do at the end of the podcast is we like to ask our guests to contribute something to what we call the commercial real estate treasure chest. It's a repository of resources that we make available to our audience. And, we've had guests contribute helpful PDFs, Excel sheets. We've had people contribute case studies. So really anything that they think would be of value to our audience. So if you don't mind, we'd love to, ask, what are you willing to contribute today?
I will contribute. I use somewhat of similar of a Excel sheet to kind of evaluate my different properties and just easily just kind of input pricing, unit counts, and rent income, and it will just kind of spit out cap rates, GRM, gross rental multiplier, cash on cash returns. I would love to be able to get that. And then just my contact information, if anybody, especially people that are looking to get into real estate, want to bounce some ideas on how I got into real estate and why I got into real estate and how I'm, making it work. It doesn't have to be a California thing, but anywhere, all the rules kind of apply the same. Me being a younger gentleman and starting when I was 23 years old, fresh out of college, getting into real estate, where a lot of the agents are a little bit older than we are, and stuff like that. I would love for anyone to just kind of, reach out to me, have a 15-minute call. I'm never too busy to, talk to someone that's new and trying to get into the business.
Yeah, we'll really appreciate that, especially. Did you want to go ahead and plug in the company as well, or how you can get in contact with the company if somebody's wanting to? Yeah. Sure. So I work at Marcus Millichap, which is one of the largest investment firms here in the country. I'm in the Oakland office. I work the San Francisco Bay Area. And I mean, if anybody's interested in any type of investments type of firm, feel free to give me a call first and then contact Marcus Millichap. But if you Google my name, Gabriel Galiothe, my last name spelling Galiothe, and I'm sure that information will be in the show notes. You could email me and find my personal website. You can find my Marcus Millichap website, and LinkedIn and all that Facebook stuff should all spit out. And and I always say, if you're not easily being able to search yourself, it's a problem, especially being a real estate agent. You should be able to type in your name and all your information pop right up. So feel free to give me a call or email and kind of go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to go ahead and include your contact information, your website, and everything in the description. So if you guys are listening to this in a podcast format, it's going to be in the description. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, check out the description and you'll be able to get in contact with Gabriel. So again, thank you so much, Gabriel. You've provided a ton of value in this podcast episode, and I know our audience is going to get a lot of value from it. For those of you guys who are listening to this podcast, again, we greatly appreciate all that you do and all the support you've given us over the course of this last year that we've done the podcast. If you guys listen to this in a podcast format, we would greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe, or at least give us a 5-star review. We've seen a significant uptick in our downloads as a result of you guys doing so. So we would greatly appreciate it if you could take a second to be able to leave us a 5-star review. Along with that, if you're watching this on YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to this channel. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and ensures more and more people can hear this message and learn about the many facets of commercial real estate. So thank you all so much for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time.